No, that's exactly right. Senator Cruz is the chairman of the committee over in the Senate. He's got the FAA bill, the regular bill that we have that every 5-year, reauthorization that's marked up and ready to go. It has a very modest 5 slots. We had started, asking for more like 18 or 20 slots. There are other airports around the country have concerns, but San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country. It is a massive, as everybody in this listening audience knows, a massive military series of installations throughout the city. Military City USA. I represent Fort Sam Houston, obviously JBSA. So many veterans. So to have a direct flight from San Antonio to Reagan National, DCA, right next to the Pentagon would be really important for not just the economic activity in San Antonio, but for our military and their operations and the civilians that are affiliated with it. So we think it's critically important. It's a modest 5 slots. Senator Cruz has done a great job. Right now, we've got to figure out how to make sure we get this through without the Virginia delegation, who is basically doing the bidding of United to box out what we would assume would be a direct flight by Southwest Airlines from San Antonio to Reagan, which would be critically important for San Antonio. It's something we've been working on for 2 decades. We're really close. We've just got to work to try to get it across the finish line.
Congressman, it's hard not to contrast the full-throated embrace of Ukraine by the Biden administration, the attempt to make permanent the aid package, and then to watch them turn on Israel and accuse the Israeli Defense Forces of human rights violations while they are in probably one of the greatest battles in that country's history against terrorists, and even to see the headline about the International Criminal Court issuing warrants for Netanyahu. I mean, help me understand how you can sort of take these contrasting points of view on the 2 hotspots in the world.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's just be very clear. I mean, what we're seeing out of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is ridiculous. Probably the whole thing should be dismantled and, salted to the ground. The idea that they're going to go after and try to target with potential warrants against from anywhere from the Prime Minister Netanyahu to, members of the IDF or otherwise is absolutely facially absurd. What we're seeing here is an international community that is definitively anti-Israel. They want to see Israel, frankly, go away. They're totally content, not just with a 2-state solution. They agree with Hamas. You can't put it any other way. And unfortunately, this administration, the Biden administration, is frankly going along with it, right? You saw that in the vote in the United Nations and the Security Council, where the Biden administration abstained from the vote in which they were calling on a ceasefire to engage and force the Israelis to back away, when in fact you've got massive continued resistance from Hamas. They're still continuing to call for the destruction of Israel. So this is ridiculous. And one other point here, this PR war to say that somehow this is a bunch of civilians getting killed. The civilian to combatant ratio here is one of the best in the history of warfare. Seriously, it will be studied for a long time, particularly given how much Hamas has built their infrastructure around schools and hospitals. The Israelis have gone out of their way to avoid killing innocent civilians. Of course, you can't be perfect, but it is a better ratio than the United Nations standard. It is a better ratio than the United States during World War II. And what we're seeing out of Israel is an effort to do the best they can while protecting their country. When Hamas wants to see the eradication of Israel, Israel's right to want to wipe out Hamas, given what they're trying to do to them.
We were talking a little while ago, Congressman, about the evolution of the anti-Semitism protests on the college campuses. We've come a long way from the Ivy presidents with your colleague Elise Stefanik in total denial. Oh, we have no problem here. Everything's fine. Now they are belatedly, too little, too late, seemingly reacting. Why are they reacting, and why is it so weak? Why are university presidents basically negotiating to get their own buildings back?
Well, that's just the state of, quote, modern academia. I mean, most of these universities themselves should frankly be, salted themselves. They're polluting the minds of our youth. They're not actually advancing the cause of Western civilization or producing people who will be productive in society. But importantly here, let's just give credit where credit is due to Jay Hartzell, the president of the University of Texas, and the way UT, which obviously is in a very liberal city with a kind of traditional liberal history in and around UT, but they are standing up in protection of the First Amendment and free speech. Since October, they have had, according to UT's information they put out, no fewer, I'm quoting them, no fewer than 13 pro-Palestinian free speech events. Meanwhile, today, they were trying to break up this, takeover around UT. And what they found is, after dealing with all of the issues and the potential of verbal assault of the dean of student staff and so forth, they found baseball-sized rocks found strategically placed within the encampment. These takeovers are designed to try to, cow the universities. And you saw it at USC out in California. They actually disrupted graduation for these kids and these families. You can't. That's not free speech. That's not viewpoint issues where you're discriminating against viewpoint. You can go out and say what you want about Palestine. You can say what you want about Israel, but you can't do it and disrupt the university, disrupt the community. That's a state-owned institution. People have the privilege of graduating and being able to carry out their livelihoods. And but by the way, these are mostly not students. These are mostly people being shipped in. And you saw the green tents. Soros is funding it. These are radical leftists who want to disrupt our way of life. And kudos to the handful like Jay Hartzell, I think Ben Sass at the University of Florida, some others who have been standing up against this nonsense. More should.
You've known, and a lot of people have known since long before these protests, that higher education is a bubble, that it is an unrealistic sort of community or communing of ideas. Is the realization that they have made a mistake now a money thing? I mean, I don't think they've come to their senses. I don't think they've become more moral. I don't think they've become more sympathetic to the Jewish students. Is it really money that they're feeling the sting of donors pulling back money? Do you think that's what's driving this?
Well, look, I think that's some of it. I mean, I think they're having to wake up to the reality. The vast majority of Americans are kind of getting sick of what they're seeing unfold right before their eyes. And in this case, of course, it's very direct and blatant anti-Semitism and the attack of Jewish students. I mean, literally making Jewish students fear for their lives. Fear for, their ability to even go to class. And look, again, it's not like it's some massive sea shift. All you're seeing is some university presidents who thankfully have been through political force put in place, particularly in public institutions, are starting to say, guys, you can't do this, right? You can say what you want, free speech, right? We're not going to discriminate against your viewpoint. But we are going to tell you time, place, and manner, as the Supreme Court has upheld. We're not going to let you take over these universities. And I think some of the private universities where they're looking at massive donors who are saying, wait a minute, right? You saw what happened at UPenn. And look, we need more. And by the way, we need to stop these just blanket funding of student loans. Then you're coming back and you're forgiving these student loans, even though my wife spent her whole life paying off her student loans. Now we're forgiving some of these loans, which is absurd. We're funding the very apparatus of these kids, not going out and having to actually be productive members of society. So people are seeing it. And honestly, not a lot of people now. Why send your kids to college?
Well, I know you mean it, and I appreciate your saying it about the public funding. But when are Republicans going to start acting instead of talking? I mean, how many Republican candidates in my lifetime promised to either stop funding this stuff or do away with the Department of Education or all the promises about education? At some point, Republicans have to deliver on those when they're governing, don't they?
Jack, I couldn't agree more. And all I can do is say I'm doing everything I know how to do. There's a large group here and growing. Elections have consequences. Primaries matter. You need to send people to Washington who will actually do what they said they would do. I'm pretty proud of my track record of doing that, but it's not good enough if I can't get everybody, I can't get us to get the majority. We've done it somewhat, right? We've done some things for the first time. We delivered the most conservative border security bill we've ever done. We got rid of amnesty. We were able to, in terms of being a driving force of the bill, we were able to actually constrain spending. Believe it or not, the non-defense spending was flat and the defense spending was paid for out of the IRS expansion. But those are like small things. The people are sick of $95 billion being sent overseas when your border's wide open and when you're simultaneously fighting Hamas. Look, I'm trying to bash heads together up here, metaphorically, trying to get my colleagues to understand that we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And you know what? Some of this fighting going on about the speakers' races and all this stuff, it's because we're trying to do what we said we would do, and some of our colleagues won't. There is no defense to funding what we did in the omnibus spending bill with $200 million going to the FBI headquarters. There's no defense for all those earmarks. And there's no defense for what you're seeing right now with that $95 billion in the overseas aid.